Last
Hey,
time, I
hey,
think it turned out pretty well.
yeah, that's true. Hey, guy, hey, this is Sunday Superversive live stream coming at you late. I expected to have another live stream for you folks with Ben Stevens, but a work emergency came up and he sadly couldn't join me. But that's all right. He has a new book out. Um, oh my goodness, what is it called?
Is his Goddess Gambit?
Yes, it's the sequel to Goddess Gambit.
I can't remember the title right now.
Ah, that's all right. But
I
you know
am
what?
ashamed to say, because I
That's
really
okay.
should know it, but
It's Yeah, to rule in hell. I'll put the
yes,
link in the chat.
pretty
Also, if you
cool
look
name.
down, hmm? Oh, absolutely. And if you look down below in the description, you'll see a link to my new book, Tears of Elfland. A bunch of kids walked into a forest and get kidnapped and tormented by fairies and must find their way out and, of course, save their father. Delightful. But we're not here for that, are we?
Not today.
No,
Haha.
no. Today, we're here for some sweet, sweet JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Ah,
I had the YouTube going in the background so I could see the live chat, and that started talking.
okay.
There we go. Okay, I'm set up. I'm good.
All right. Well, we're streaming live here, dude. We have to be careful. We have to entertain the masses or something. I don't know. I'm not good at that part. So,
I mean, this
you
will be
know,
left up, so if anybody wants to see it later, it's there.
that's true. That's true indeed. So, you have just finished JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 5, haven't you?
I did finish it, and I basically caught up on JoJolion. I said I would do it when I caught up, but I cheated a bit. I'm like 3 chapters away, or something like that.
So what? That's like the last chapter of the head doctor arc, and
Something
then
like that.
the two
Uh,
Ojiro returns arc.
yeah. Let me think. Where I'm at, they flashed back to a week ago, where I think Sarugi killed someone, but
Well, he didn't kill them. They
it's
aren't.
not quite clear. Hurt someone, I guess, because I didn't figure that out yet at the point I was reading.
Don't worry. She's not dead. Though it's a whole bunch of weirdness going on that no one is quite sure what's causing it, including finally a stand that interacts with time.
Oh,
Uh,
about time.
right? It's like, yeah, come on, Araki, don't hold out on us. Don't hold out on us. And it's like, there we go.
That
It's a
was the
time
funniest part of
manipulation.
Steel Ball Run, honestly. Even unintentionally. And I don't even like it, it's not even a criticism at this point. Because it's just what he does. But when the world shows up at the end of Steel Ball Run, I'm like, amazing. He went this entire time with no hint of a time travel stand, and then he brings back the world for the very last battle.
The
The,
action climax.
I got nothing to say to that. That's gotta have your time travel battle.
Yep, you absolutely must. And
Parts
on,
3 through 7.
yeah, and we might be having one here. But though, to be fair, they did have one before the world with Ringo Road again, which is considered, and I
Oh, that's
agree,
true.
the
Yes.
best like villain minion ever put to paper by Iraqi.
I would say my favorite fight of Steel Ball Run, because let's get into, since it just, this came up now, let's start with Steel Ball Run, because everybody loves Steel Ball Run,
They
including
do.
me. I love Steel Ball Run.
Mm-hmm.
And my favorite battle in Steel Ball Run was probably Civil War. Now,
Really?
I went on to the Stardust Crusaders forums and was looking at videos and things. And from what I could see, what's normally considered the two most well-received battles are indeed True Man's World and Civil War. So we split the difference right there.
True Man's World, Civil War, and what?
Just those two are considered like normally the top two.
Yeah, I dig it.
And I would agree with that. There were some that weren't quite as good, maybe thematically, but I love the Scary Monsters battle. Because that's maybe my favorite stand ever. That's just such an insane, chaotic idea.
Right.
And I love the battle between Hot Pants Diego and Valentine. I thought that was really good. I love the James Bond-esque sequence where Lucy infiltrates Valentine and knocks out his wife and ends up killing his wife and steals the corpse part. I thought that was fantastic.
The Hot Pants versus Mike O fight, as well as the Blackmore fight, was pretty amazing. Blackmore had just a sense of otherworldliness about him as he's like walking in the rain and like cutting people up with the rain. He's like, his stand power is literally omnipotent when raining. But he's not omniscient and he's not like wise or anything else like that. So it's not quite an Okuyasu situation because he is really strong. It's more of a I don't know what. But you know, it was just a really good ethereal fight. Then the Hot Pants versus Mike O fight is just really good. Just because he still goes for it, and then his head blows up, and it's like, oh. Though moving on, Joe Jolian, like a Steel Ball Run, is fantastic. Joe Jolian is an interesting conversation topic forever.
Joe Jolian's fascinating. I'll give it that, and that's not a negative, and it's something of a positive, and it's certainly not a negative. But it's a fascinating story. I will say this, and this is somewhat negative towards Joe Jolian, though it's really more complimentary towards Steel Ball Run. Reading after I had finished Steel Ball Run, my initial reaction is that was good. Maybe not as good as everyone said. And then I read Joe Jolian, and Joe Jolian was good. But then I'm like, if this is good, but Steel Ball Run was better, putting those two together, Steel Ball Run was really good. And then I thought it over and I'm like, there were like 5 battles that all were like among the best in the entire JoJo series. So yeah, Steel Ball Run was amazing, but Joe Jolian gets better as it goes along, I think, for sure. These last couple of battles have been that I've read are really, really good. With what's the guy's name? The little baby stand user.
Poor Tom.
Yeah, the Poor Tom battle where they set the orchard on fire was great.
Yeah. I admit, like, rereading it without, like, the gap months and without a month in between each chapter really improves the quality.
There are certain sections that I think, though, are among the weaker stuff that Araki has done, to be honest. They have that whole... What?
Blue Lagoon.
Blue Lagoon. It wasn't exactly a disaster by any means, but not Jobin, Joshu. By the way, there are 3 JoJos in that family, but whatever. Which I know was intentional, so it's just, I think that's funny. Anyway, yeah, Joshu, who's the Gamma one, they spend an entire chapter following him around, or like 1 or 2 chapters even, like following him around with him as the protagonist. And I really, really hated those chapters. He's an unpleasant person. He's an unpleasant person to follow, and I didn't care about his story at all. And also, from what I could see, it never came up again. So I don't really get what the point of that was. It seemed like a time waster, and he was an unpleasant person to spend time with.
He's weirdly popular in Japan.
That is weird. I could see the Bakugos of the world being popular because, he's a headstrong character. He's powerful. There's something magnetic about his personality. But
Hmm.
why Joshu? I don't see that at all. I
I don't
don't
know.
get the appeal.
They actually got him into the Eyes of Heaven video game instead of like anyone else.
Did they really?
Yeah,
That's so
like
stupid.
they have like this great. Well, to be fair, Mamazuku Rai wasn't out yet,
Oh
so
yeah, he's fantastic.
right.
He's probably, I don't know if I would, is he my favorite character in JoJolion? Probably by default, I guess. Not that I particularly dislike anyone, but he's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's like, but the he actually has a whole bunch of really funny interactions because Josuke obviously doesn't like him and uses him like as a ping pong, bouncing him around as a weapon when their group attacks, duo attacks. It's quite hilarious.
The plant appraiser, he is a pretty interesting guy because he does this whole thing with Josuke where it's like, I'm going to have to be your priority protecting. And Josuke just kind of doesn't answer him. Because, like, you can see on one hand, he needs him on his side. But on the other hand, he's totally never going to be the priority. I mean,
Right.
like, but Josuke can't actually say that outright because then that might make him not be on his side. But what makes
Hmm.
the plant appraiser kind of interesting is that he seems to also know that and even respect him on some level for it. Because I think
Yep.
in that same battle, he runs off after Yasuo, and the plant appraiser watches him and thinks to himself, I'm going to have to upgrade him in my mind to dependable. Yeah, like I guess because after giving that whole spiel, Josuke kind of proved he wasn't going to abandon his friends, just because of some vague agreement that he didn't even really make.
Yep.
So I suppose in the plant appraiser's mind, it was a little bit of a test,
Yep.
but it was a pretty cool scene. Uh, he is a really fun character to watch. I was quite surprised he wasn't dead after the orchard attack. I gotta say, I thought they killed him off.
Right, but his power is literally to turn himself into uh, a load of a load of string, except it's more like fabric.
Yeah, similar
Hey,
but not
hey.
quite the same as Jolene.
Yep, and it's just an interesting ability, and to me, it'd be more surprising if he did die, sort of thing, because then it would be
I thought he had been set on fire in the orchard. Like first they had cut off his arms or something, and then I thought he had been set on fire in the orchard. And then even Jobin is like, well, the plant. That's why I thought he was dead too, because even Jobin is like, oh well, the plant appraiser's dead. And then Josuke runs over and goes, oh, thank goodness you're alive. And I'm like,
right,
oh, really? Like that's cool. I like this character. I, I was hoping he'd live.
right. It's
So that was kind of interesting. I do wonder, like, I feel like there should have been more fallout from that of Jobin being convinced he was dead, and then he's literally in like the next scene when they're all meeting as a family.
well,
Uh,
Jobin is a really cool character. He doesn't really panic for any reason. Like
that's true.
uh and to the guest, which is the best Arturia, Saber or Lance? Fate.
What was this?
Woolly Ram asks, which is the best Arturia, Saber or Lance? Or do we mock him for having terrible taste in anime? Fate
I
stay.
don't even know what is Arturia.
All right. Well,
I'm
I'm
gonna.
I'm sorry, Woolly Ram. He doesn't understand the Fate Stay universe. No Fate Stay night here.
Oh, okay. No, I've never watched it. I suppose I should. I've been vaguely looking at it occasionally and going, maybe I should give this a shot, but
Fate
I haven't bothered yet.
Zero. Fate Zero is worth watching.
I
Um,
know they just came out with a spin-off anime that's supposed to be pretty decent, so
the only spin-off anime you should ever watch is Carnival Phantasm. Any other one is usually kind of trash. And
I
that
see.
Carnival Phantasm is pretty funny in places. It's kind of like Isekai Quartet, except good because it's one universe instead of like 4 different universes.
I see.
Willie Ram is
Isekai
disappointed.
Quartet is terrible. Isekai Quartet's terrible.
Yes, it is. We know. I absolutely agree with you that Isekai, like it's one of those things. Like I'm glad JoJo doesn't have anything like that. Um,
It does. It's called Eyes of Heaven, and it's great.
it's not the same type of thing.
No, I know it's not. I know. I know.
Uh,
You
uh,
you I get it, man. I know it's not really. I'm
uh,
Anyway. Oh, we should talk about the finale of part 5.
what did you think of it, Anthony?
Uh, I really am not so sure. It was certainly good enough that it didn't sour the experience for me. How about that? Like,
I
I
get you.
ended it satisfied with the story. I didn't end it and then go, wow, what a waste of time or anything like that. But uh, the thing with Diavolo, the whole never ending deaths thing with Diavolo, I think that's a good, ending for the character, the way that they went with it, how it fits with
Right,
the
right.
themes and all of that. The only issue I had with it is that I watched it and I was thinking to myself, I knew in advance what was going to happen. So, okay, so that's why I understood it, but if I hadn't, I would have had no clue what was going on here because they spend maybe 5 minutes, if that, on his final fate, and then it's never brought up again.
Well, it's not supposed to be brought up again.
Well, no, but don't
It's
I want to
infinite.
know more like what goes on? I mean, Kira gets more to his death scene.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, that's why. He does. He
No.
gets his whole final battle is basically a speech. Kira, well, to be fair, here's the big difference. Kira gives speeches and Diavolo does not.
What? Diavolo gives a speech every time he shows up.
Hmm.
Every
Does
single
he?
time. Every
Does he?
single time.
I don't remember anything
He
Diavolo
gives
has said.
speeches as Doppio.
Oh, well, I guess that's true.
Yeah, like so
He does.
basically
I'll give you that. He does Astopio, but as Diavolo, he normally is just going on about how he's totally the best.
yeah.
And but Kira, like, he gives these long, pretty famous monologues. Honestly, I mean,
Yeah.
he
Well,
they ended up all becoming pretty famous in their own right
like
because they're all really funny.
with Kira or Diavolo.
Yeah, Kira.
Yeah, I
Kira's are
mean,
really funny.
Luck has sided with Chicago Kira, and it's like, oh, you hurt me.
The "I'm just a simple man" speech is a
Yep.
great speech.
Oh yeah. But like so with Diavolo, excuse me. With Diavolo, he has several really good speeches. The first one is when we meet him with Bucciarati and Trish as they're taking him into the chapel. Basically, time flows away, and he goes, "I wish to live as an everlasting climax," which is a literal translation of the Japanese. And ascend, forever and never experience a moment of weakness because he plans on using his stand
Ha!
to,
Irony, dramatic irony.
yep,
I get it.
yep.
You
Uh,
sly dog.
and so he wants to use it to never really face the negative consequences of his actions. He will only accept good consequences of his actions. As it goes on with talking with Doppio and other things like that, the encouragement and the protection he wants to give is really just kind of sort of like both self preservation and manipulation. but it's not quite as grandiose a speech as Kira's. But then again, it's a different sort of character.
Oh
Kira
yeah,
is
they're
the
very
friendly,
different.
yeah, friendly neighborhood serial killer. Diavolo is the gang boss who is obsessed with overcoming his past. Not really that there's a past for him to overcome, just that he wants to overcome it.
You know,
Um,
there is something a little bit Kira, almost anti-Kira-ish there, in that the boss has a past that's very white bread and boring. Yeah, and he really, really doesn't like that. And
right.
Kira wants to live a white bread, boring life where he can just kind of serial kill on the side.
Yep. Just whenever he feels like it. Nothing crazy. Um,
Yeah,
but
right.
the last sort of speech he has is when they're fighting over um the what do
Yeah,
we
right.
call it? Yeah, the arrow, but I thought they had a different name. The
I've
Requiem
only ever
arrow.
heard it called.
There we
Oh,
go.
yeah.
When they're fighting over the Requiem arrow, he basically makes a speech about why he deserves to have it.
Yeah,
Uh,
and like 3 episodes ago, he makes a speech, something like that, I think.
yep. And so it basically he doesn't need like Hira. Part of his charm, such as it is that he makes speeches. He's actually a very dramatic character, but he says he wants to be a white bread, normal lifestyle. But
Well,
then,
right. Kira's a liar.
mm, exactly. And then but then with the Avalo, he's actually not really a liar or anything like that. Um,
No, one thing about Diavolo is he's very upfront. I mean,
wait, did I say
honestly,
Kira or Diavolo?
I'm sorry, yeah, Diavolo. He's very
Yeah,
upfront
yeah,
with like with Trish when they go, oh, he's gonna betray Trish. But if you think about it, when is he betraying Trish? When did he ever say he wanted to help Trish? He just said he wanted to make sure Trish was brought over to him.
yep.
And yeah, that he never said anything else. And in
Hmm.
fact, he when they get there, he certainly doesn't try to hide what he's going to do. Yeah,
Yep.
he tells them flat out.
Yep. The thing is, though, he really, 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 really should have waited for Bucciarati to let Trish go. But then again, hmm,
Eh, look,
you
at
know,
that point in the story, I remember reading there was an interesting thing on Bucciarati, who's an S tier Jobro, one of like the four or so S tier Jobros
just
of the
so
world.
everyone knows, Speedwagon, Caesar Zappelli, Bucciarati, and Gyro Zappelli.
Yep,
Yep,
those are
just
the top tier of all the Jobros.
yep. And I just wanted to know that everyone on our Discord server who actually interacts with me is an S tier Joe bro, automatically in my personal story. Yeah. Anyway, but like the, I suppose it like Bucciarati's fight, quote unquote, with Diavolo actually sort of has this great dramatic flair to it. Like, there's this great leitmotif that covers it, that connects it to the Court of the Crimson King, which is one of my favorite songs by King Crimson, along with 21st Century Schizoid Man, where which all applies. It's a
Yes, it
masterclass
does.
in connecting
That's
like
one of his
names and stuff like
tighter
that to music.
connecting. It's one of his tighter connecting pieces with his music. Normally, it's just stealing a name, but he actually does some thematic work with King Crimson.
Oh yeah, but when they have their little fight there, uh, it's actually a really great sort of dive into hell sort of sequence,
Oh,
in the
that's one of
underworld.
the best episodes of the whole show.
Oh yeah, that's when I started to really love JoJo Part 5. Except for like so JoJo up till parts 1 and 2 I just loved from the beginning. JoJo Part 3 I liked at the Oh, what's his name? I never remember his name. I need to remember his name. But he was the guy who used water as a stand. Like
Oh,
I
I
was
know.
just
I know
okay.
who you're talking about, but he was very early on in the story.
No, he was about halfway through
I thought he would. Then it's possible we're thinking of different people, but is this
in
the
part
one
three.
Jotaro? Yeah, Jotaro goes underwater.
Yeah, no, that's after that one.
Okay, yeah, because that's early. But what's
Eh,
water as a stand? I don't remember.
I can't
Was that when
remember.
they're in the desert?
Yep,
That's when they got his eyes, the Kakyoin.
yep,
That Kakyoin.
yep.
They got his eyes.
Oh
I
man,
still every now and then it's one of those things where like if you're in a bad mood, you put
in
that
duel,
video on,
right?
just lifts you right up. They got his eyes.
No, the guy I'm talking about is in duel. That's about when I started to really love JoJo Part Three. Um,
Well, my thought on part three was always like I was always kind of lukewarm on part three, except for it was never bad. It was really like I want to emphasize I don't think I've ever had a bad time either watching or reading JoJo. Uh,
hmm
I've liked all of them, and that includes pretty much the entirety of part three as well. But
Yep.
with that said, I think it got repetitive, but there were a couple of really, really great battles.
Mm.
But particularly, it has some of the standout battles in the series. Darby the Gambler
Oh
uh,
yes.
is very famous. Uh, then when you get to the end, the whole final section of part three really weirdly again from Iggy versus Pet Shop to the end. Part three is fantastic,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's when it starts. Of all things to start off that final arc of brilliance, it's Iggy versus Pet Shop.
Right. But that's
Such a
exactly what
weird
it needed.
thing,
It's really
and
quite excellent.
it was so good. Like I remember when I finished and going, I don't even know what I just watched. I'm like, that was the dog versus a bird. The bird
Right.
didn't even talk. It was just a bird.
Right. It was just a serial killing falcon who shoots ice and whose stand looks like an ice pterodactyl. Like it's absolutely fantastic.
But from that point to the ending, the Vanilla Ice fight, of course, and Jotaro versus the world, which is probably
hmm
no, I was gonna say probably, but that's wrong. Which is definitely the most famous fight in the entirety of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Yep.
Uh, and I think deservedly so. Dio being the JoJo villain, and Jotaro being the iconic JoJo hero. You know,
Yep.
favorite or not favorite, Jotaro is who people think of first when you think of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. So that battle really being the culmination of an incredibly long series.
Oh yeah.
I mean, part three is like 40 something episodes, so that's the thing. It elevated it for me. By the time I ended it, I remember thinking to myself, I'm probably going to remember this as being better than it actually was, but you know what? I think it deserves that.
Well, it's like one of those things where you have a hard time figuring out like what even went on there for some of it. Like, does anyone remember the 2 episodes they spent on Raw and their stand Master Arabia Fats, who wasn't even named in the main series? Like,
No,
well, he was.
no, I do not remember that at all.
He got an epithet. It's like Arabia Fats retired, and it's like, huh, okay, we didn't even
Although I
talk
did
to this
love
guy.
the two comedic episodes with that kid who drew comics that predicted the future.
Yep, those episodes were like genuinely funny. It's like you gotta trust it. You gotta trust it. So he like roundhouse kicks a woman because fate said so, and like it's like here, have
I
some
also
money.
like
You
when he
saved
gets
me.
he's in the car with them and he goes, wait, hold on. I look like Jotaro now. And then he realizes that he's about to blow up. jumps out of the
Yep.
car. It's like, yes, I escaped. And then they throw out the bomb and it lands right next to him.
Right. It's like, hey man, hey Jotaro, why don't you do that cigarette trick you always do? And it's like, oh yeah, where you put like 50
It has
cigarettes
such
in
a
your mouth.
it really did have like a delightful absurdity to it as they ask him to do more and more completely ridiculous things,
That you don't think Jotaro would ever actually
and
do.
they're all totally like, oh yeah, Jotaro, the cigarette trick, and they're all totally sincere about it too.
Yeah. So it's
They're
like
just like,
maybe he
I
did.
loved your cigarette trick, Jotaro. He shows up there. You go, hey, Jotaro. I thought you ran out to use the bathroom. You got here already? And Jotaro's just like, you guys are weird. Anyway, let's go. And nobody questions it ever again.
Right. Actually, listen, like Jotaro's reaction to people is usually, "You guys are weird. Stop it." It's like, "Leave me
Yeah.
alone."
He also has my favorite line in part four, which is very quotable overall. But when he
Mm.
walks over to Kira, looks down, he goes, that's a nice watch you got there. It's a shame that I'm gonna have to break it. And then he looks at Kira and goes, and by that I mean I'll break your face.
It's dumb. It's a dumb line, but it's fantastic.
It's so
Uh,
Jotaro, though.
it is. It is. Uh,
But part five, that's what I'll say about the ending of part five. The end, part five, I really loved it. I thought it was great. I
mhm.
think I loved Bucciarati as a character. I think that Giorno is the least memorable of the JoJos, but he worked well. Yeah,
Mhm.
I had no issues with him. I liked him.
Yeah.
It had some really great episodes, like the two-parter where they meet Diavolo was fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah, when they turn traitor. The Chocolata fight was fantastic. Grateful Dead was terrific.
Oh, the Grateful Dead is the arc where I started to love part 5. Like, I was just kind of okay going into it, and then, like, the Grateful Dead arc came in, and I'm like, "Oh."
Oh, and Spice Girl. Spice Girl was a great two-parter.
Underused.
Notorious Big. Yeah, I wish they had used the stand more, but it was a good two-part episode.
Notorious
The
Big was a great arc, though. It's like any motion that you make, it'll attack, and it's like, "Oh." But now that we're back at part 5, I made the claim that the ending was thematically perfect for the entire series. Do you agree?
Yes, I will say this as a mild criticism of part five. I had already more or less worked out the theme, which is as it should be, because if the theme is present throughout, you should be able to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing about defying fate, and Giorno literally gets an ability at the end where its stated ability is defying fate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically the plot of the entire thing. You know, nobody ever can defeat the boss. Nobody can turn on the boss. You have to listen to the boss. And then they turn traitor and they need to figure out a way to defeat the inevitable.
And the
And
thing,
that's what
yeah,
they come up with. But if I had to criticize part five mildly, it's that they really hammer this home. Like really, really hammer it home in part five. If you didn't get it, then they light it up with a neon sign.
and honestly, sometimes you just have to light it up with a neon sign. That's the thing. Like it's like here's they don't like well, like you and I, we're pretty well trained as writers and whatnot
Yeah,
and critics. So we kind of figure out already that this is about fate. The ending of the boss, him being locked in an infinite death loop, is about him being stuck to his fate forever. Maybe he could learn from it and defy it, but it's implied that he's never going to figure it out. He's never going to be anything but stuck with his fate. So you get um, so like But the thing is, they never come out and say it, other than in the sense of the boss controls fate as his own fate, and he has the future and stuff like that. But then they needed someone like Scalippi with that last with the last episode, so to say, where. By the way, did you notice all the Jesus parallels with Scalippi, the sculptor?
Oh, that guy. Yeah, yeah.
Did you?
No, actually.
He's
I have
wearing
to
okay.
admit, I definitely missed.
So he's wearing a crown of thorns, and Mista shoots. I'm sending you his article. Mista shoots stigmata into his hands.
Oh, interesting.
Right, and it's one of those things where it's like he it's implied that while he didn't like create the fate, he set it in stone, and he knows about it, which is quite interesting stuff.
Well, he says it outright, doesn't he? He knows
Yep.
exactly what's going to happen.
Yep.
I
And
mean,
well, he doesn't know like the events and stuff like that. He just knows that it's going to be a violent end if,
yeah,
they keep going like this.
Bucciarati is an interesting character here too, because Bucciarati is the guy who both understands the most exactly how difficult what they're doing is going to be, like the sheer impossibility of it, but is also the person who has, I'm trying to think of how to put it. He's the one who has the best sense that it can be done, because Bucciarati literally brought himself back from the dead through sheer willpower.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is actually an important point. Everybody's saying, it's impossible, you can't do it, because it's about defying fate. But
Yep.
Bucciarati very literally defied his fate. They said, he was killed. He was dead. And Bucciarati said, "No, I'm not done yet."
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about, like, you got to find the third option, right?
Yeah.
Like, if there's no way forward, you force your way forward. At one point, Abacchio, I think, says it earlier. He tells Giorno, "You have to make sacrifices. You have to do it." And Giorno tells him flat out, "No, we're going to do everything. We're going to get Trish to the boss, and everybody is going to survive by the time we get there. Take a third
Mm-hmm.
option." That's what Giorno's kind of that's sort of Giorno's ability, his ability to inspire people. Somebody mentioned something with Bucciarati about the way that he tortured Giorno, or he was willing to torture Giorno, where they pointed out that Giorno is a 15-year-old kid, even though he looks like he's 25. Uh, but
That's
Giorno
true. That's true.
Giorno is technically a 15-year-old kid, and he was actually younger than Narantia when Narantia joined, and Bucciarati was much nicer to Narantia. And Bucciarati also admits that Leaky Eye Luca was kind of a scumbag, but he's still willing to badly torture and potentially kill Giorno if he has to, which doesn't
Mm-hmm.
really seem to fit with what we know of Bucciarati. But that's kind of the point, I think. I don't think this was an Iraqi forgot moment.
Well, no, I think it's a different thing though. He still is loyal to the boss. He doesn't have that inspiration to defy the boss yet.
Right. What
So in other
Giorno's
words,
whole thing was Giorno was reminding him why he was doing this. He had
yes.
forgotten. He
Yep.
was now working for the boss. And Giorno points out to him that you don't have to be doing this. Again, you're not locked into your fate.
That's
You
right.
can change it. And that's why at the end of the story, it's said pretty explicitly by Bucciarati, who thanks Giorno for kind of reminding him that, you don't need to do anything. You don't need to be like this.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that he was willing to torture Giorno when earlier he wasn't willing to torture Narantia, I think is just a sign that Bucciarati at that point had gotten too complacent with his role in the organization.
Probably. There's also, like, if I remember Narancia's backstory, like, Narancia didn't need to get his butt kicked. Like, I can't remember what was Narancia doing.
No, but it's admittedly overly harsh from what we know of Bucciarati later on. I would say I'd agree with that.
But yeah, but we don't really. But we see Bucciarati go for we see Bucciarati go for Pol's gold after Jorn. By the way, the exception for part 5 is the lighter test. The lighter test is an amazing arc. But
Yes,
let me see here.
that was very good.
About themes, Wooly Ram says Heinlein, in his criminally underrated novel Double Star, says through his elder statesman stand in, and he did love to say things. If you have a point, make it clear, repeat it with simple words. You can never be too on the nose. And that's a pretty true statement if you got something as heavy as fate on the line, I guess.
I just felt like we had a 2-part finale, and one part of the finale was just focused on hammering home themes that I thought had been made very clear. But what do I
mhm.
know? Yeah, whatever. It wasn't that big. To be honest, it was actually a pretty entertaining story, and at least I thought so.
Oh yeah.
I found the story fairly entertaining, so it wasn't like it ruined anything. And it there was never a point where I finished the show and I didn't think, wow, what a disappointing ending. Nothing like that. It was
We
very satisfying.
It's actually a pretty big risk for JoJolian because they could be running that way, just because the stakes are kind of all over the place at all times. So we never really feel that satisfaction that the more arc-centric JoJos
Yeah,
do. So
JoJolian's so weird.
it
It,
is. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy it as much as I do other ones. Like,
I
here's
think
the
it's
thing.
getting very good. I think that like the crap, I keep forgetting his name.
Who? Which one?
The orchard fire fight.
Oh, Jobin. Yeah, poor Tom.
Poor Tom, thank you. I want to say like Little Bill, and I'm like, that's not even close.
Slick Willie.
My brother is in the background going, Little Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
So
poor Tom. That
yeah.
fight is great. The later fight, the next fight after, it's great when they're fighting the Rock Doctor, the one who can turn himself into rocks and shoves himself into people.
Wu
Uh,
Tamaki.
yeah, that that was a great fight with Yasuo and Mitsuba. Was that
Yep.
her name? Yeah,
Mitsuba.
Yasuo and Mitsuba. Uh, that was a great fight as well.
Yep.
And now I'm on to this arc where I am currently at, which is very close to being caught up. Is this little arc with Tsurugi and the little girl who is injured in the gate?
Oh,
And
so like the arc you're on is Ojiro returns. Like, it's the villain from the very first proper arc of JoJo. Uh, Basically he fights Jobin and Tsurugi,
it
and it
looks to me. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
it's actually like one of those things. It's like fun is the most specific stand in all of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. You have to be over the person, and they have to get cut, and all kinds of weird stuff can happen. But if he gets those two, things taken care of, he actually has full control over your body and your limbs that he has injured.
It's a stand with a lot of holes, though.
Eh,
Well, here's the problem. You need to be cut over every extremity.
yes.
That's why, like, you need so much to go right to
Yes.
get it to work.
Which is why he has to do so much preparation and clever work to get it to go. But the thing is that of course it goes badly for him.
It made for a good first fight, though. I like that fight.
Oh, it was a pretty decent fight. If we're gonna say the time I finally fell in love, sort of, with JoJolian, That would have to be. Let me bring something up real quick so I get the name right. There it is. When I finally sort of fell in love with Jojolian was the uh, what was it? Which fight was it? Because I didn't really care for Daya's fight or Tsurugi's fight.
You know, the weird thing with Daya's fight was that I felt like I should be liking it more than I did, because it's a pretty clever idea,
Yeah,
but I just ended up, like, for some reason, it didn't really hit home. I think because Daya as a character, I don't think really works very well,
she's
to be
she's
honest.
okay. She does what she needs to do. She shows up, and it's like it introduces us to a family of stand users and the stakes. Um, but the thing is that like, so here's a theory that people have been talking about that I kind of agree, and that's that Araki rewrote part 8 halfway through, give or take.
Interesting.
So in the original sort of thing, it was just going to be money laundering, Damo Tamaki, and then maybe some Jobin things, and then a fight with Jobin.
Yeah, Jobin, I think, is going to be the final villain, though.
There's also
Jobin's
Kato,
definitely a villain. He gives his whole
the villain.
"I'm above morality" speech. Yeah.
Yep. No, don't get me wrong. Like, if anyone's going to be the main villain, it's him. But there's also Kato, his mother, who also has a pretty solid um, claim for it. You know what I mean? Uh, like obviously, Hato, Daya, Joshu, etc., aren't going to be like final boss material, but you could definitely see some sort of conflict between Tsurugi and Jobin at the last second, forcing everyone
Now
to,
that could be interesting. I've noticed that Araki in Stone Ocean and Steel Ball Run, he's more willing to have the final conflict be with someone besides his JoJo's now.
yep,
Previously, he had made it a rule that it was always had to be the JoJo who ended the story, but he broke that rule in Stone Ocean, and then he breaks the rule again in Steel Ball Run.
to
So he's
great
more
success,
to what?
to great success.
Oh, in both cases.
But
Which,
the
by
thing
the
is,
way, we're gonna bring up Stone Ocean again soon because we literally skipped over that. We went from 5 to 7 to 8
don't worry, we'll come back to that in a minute.
because
Uh,
yeah, we're going back to that. But
yeah,
anyway,
yeah. So like the thing about Steel Ball Run, I don't think he actually broke his rule. And I don't think he broke his rule with
I
Stone Ocean either.
I wouldn't say. I do think though how about this? He stretches it more than he normally does. He's getting more creative in his usage, in the
Yeah,
way that he writes. It's pretty interesting seeing him improve as the series goes on in terms of
right.
technique.
I wonder like what happened to his editor for like Joe Jolian. Like cuz it's like so the problem with Joe Jolian and it's a pretty big problem is that sometimes it's a monthly release schedule and sometimes he skips months. He skips as many as like 3 to 4 months a
Well,
year.
here's the problem. Araki's an old man.
Who
That's
he
that's the
looks
problem.
20 years younger than he is.
I might look it, but he's actually an old man. I don't think it's an editor thing. I think it's literally Araki. Manga making a manga is incredibly difficult, and
Right.
Araki's trying not to die.
I listen, if Achira Oda can like meet every deadline until his editors tell him stop or you're dying, I think that a monthly, thing it'll work just
Are
fine.
we comparing people to Oda though? I
Yeah, that's
mean,
true.
you get
You're
the
right.
other. I think that Araki splits the difference pretty well between Oda and crap. Who's Hunter x Hunter and Yu Yu Hakusho? Tagashi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he splits the difference pretty well between Oda and Tagashi.
Yeah, Tagashi is too much, and part of the problem is that like them being Japanese and weird, they become obsessed with things, and it takes over their writing and manga time. And it's like the Berserk guy as well. It's like finish your dang stories, please.
Yeah, really.
Just like this, like the Hunter x Hunter guy, if he really just wanted to quit or whatever, should have just said, okay guys, the election arc was the last arc, I've resolved all my plot lines. He
I guess he
has.
had stuff to do with Kurapika, and that's
Yes.
honestly fair.
And it's
But
not
at
like the
this,
Dark Continent is bad, but it's been like 3 to 4 months since the last set of chapters.
I have to
um
admit, I do want to see the fight between Hisoka and Crollo animated.
yeah.
That
Yeah, I'm not as sold on their characters as other people are. Like Hisoka is fine, but you see enough psycho clowns, it's just ruins it for you. Um,
I like Crollo a lot. I think Crollo is very interesting, but whatever.
yep,
Anyway, this is off topic from JoJo. The problem with JoJolian. I will
yep,
say this: I think JoJolian, at least reading it all at once, it's for the p. I wouldn't call it bad. I wouldn't say it had bad pacing because it always has forward momentum.
yep.
Though there is a section in the middle, I think, where he kind of stops to figure out what to do next, which might be the point where he decided to change the direction he was going.
And where do you think that is?
I think it was around where he gives that chapter to Joshu, and also they heavily imply this is one thing that it's a Chekhov's gun that so far hasn't been fired. He steals the money. They tell him only if somebody else steals the money can you break the curse. And then they
Mm-hmm.
show Josuke learning that they're going to stop the treatments on Holly and that he needs to pay a very large sum of money to have them continue it properly. And he says
Mm-hmm.
something along the lines of, I will make sure it happens. So they're heavily hinting there, at least to me, that Josuke is going to be the guy who steals this money, or at least considers it, or at least Joshu is going to try and trick him into it. And none of that is ever brought up again.
You see, to me, I
And
didn't
I think that
pick it up.
point is probably when he started retooling where he was going to go with it because it had stalled a bit at that point. But from then on, it keeps a pretty it keeps moving. The story moves. It doesn't
Yes.
stagnate. At least past that point. That's the only part I would call it stagnate. And I think even before then, there was the whole thing again because Joshu, I really don't like the character when they go down Shakedown Road.
Yeah.
I thought that was really weak. I didn't really get the point of that, and again, I figured we would be seeing more of it, and we never do, which
Mm-hmm.
I think supports the whole idea that Araki didn't really know where he was going with it, came up with a better idea, and in fairness to him, it is a better idea because it's better now.
Yep. And like, I'm less harsh on Joshu than you are. Um, like he is a very despicable Gamma, but he's so pathetic. It's actually quite funny, especially when he starts using his stand to prank his sisters and stuff like that.
I'll give him this. I'll give
Yeah.
Araki this. Joshu is meant to be a portrayal of almost the perfect gamma male, and Araki does nail the portrayal. It's not a
Yep.
problem in writing in terms of that, he wanted to create a character and he executed because
Yep.
he did execute on concept perfectly. I just don't like spending time with him. Anytime we have to follow Joshu, I'm like, this guy again?
Yes, this
He's
guy again.
dumb. It's pointless. Yeah, whatever.
Yep. Yep. So it's so like going back to a point I made previously, and I want to justify it real quick in front of everyone. So when I say that Araki has never actually broken his rule about main JoJo's defeating the main villain, in part 6, Jolene gave Impario heavy weather stand disc.
Right. She sacrifices herself to do it too.
Yep.
Also, we just spoiled the ending of part 6. Sorry, guys.
The existence of part 7 is itself a spoiler for part 6. Like
Is it
just
though?
saying. Yes.
Is it though?
The
Because
second the second you realize that it's different except with the same characters, you should be able to put together that it's an alternate dimension.
something weird happened.
Something weird has happened in the state of Denmark. Anyway,
Finish your point, and then we'll talk about part 6, but finish your
so
point first.
7, even though Dio isn't defeated by a a JoJo, he is Valentine, the true main villain, is defeated by Johnny Joestar.
Yes, this
And
is definitely true.
while their scene at the end in the pit is an incredibly tense, very dramatic scene, it's not doesn't have the same weight as High Voltage.
I thought it was cleverly done, though.
It was incredibly cleverly done. It was amazing. It was outstanding. It was even better, I would say, than this one.
It was a perfectly fired Chekhov's gun. It was it was that moment where she brings out, and again, we are talking about this with absolutely no context. So if you don't know what we're talking about, congratulations, because we would literally need to go through the plot of Steel Ball Run to make it to this point. But anyway, when she pulls out Diego's head, it was
Yep.
that perfect moment where you think for a moment, then you go, "Oh, that's really clever."
Yep.
Like that. So that's what she was doing. That makes perfect sense. That's really smart. It's that great. If you read a good mystery novel and you hit that point, that's kind of the same sort of experience. That snap of recognition and understanding, and where you're momentarily impressed at, the writer's brilliance.
Yep.
And
So
that's what he achieved at the end of Steel Ball Run.
yep. And that's why like JoJolian's kind of a whiplash for me. Just because it's completely different. Like Steel Ball Run, sorry, JoJolian is 21 volumes right now.
Yeah, it's long.
It's stupid long, but it doesn't feel that long. That's the thing. And then it's like, oh, and then you remember, XYZ, you remember Soft and Wet, which took like 5 parts, 5 chapters to do. Uh, you know, it's or you got you know, let me see here. Paisley Park and Born This Way arc. You remember that arc?
What was Born This Way? I probably do, but don't remember the name since I.
It was the Higashikata maid uh
Oh,
his arc, except that like she's Kira's sister. So it's like she has like super huge stakes in it. Like you complain about Daya, but
yeah, right.
she doesn't even
There's
get that much.
more evidence for the Araki changed his mind theory.
Yep.
And I want to emphasize here that while it is a legitimate flaw that he had to change directions partway through, the change was for the better,
Yeah.
because I do think that the series noticeably improved and I am quite enjoying it right now. Uh,
Yep.
so it was a change for the better, but with that said, that is a criticism. It's a legitimate criticism that could be
Yeah.
leveled. If he didn't change it, it certainly felt like he did, and that's really no better.
Yep. And it's like it kind of like don't get me wrong. The changes he decided to make sense in story. Like this isn't something like where you're reading a story and then the guy clearly decides that his self-insert character is going to get the girl at one point. And so he changes the romantic
Yeah,
subplot.
no, it's nothing
This
like
is
that.
right. This is more
It
uh
was more, I think, that Araki. wasn't quite. He had an idea of where he wanted to go, and I think he had something. Remember, this is technically an alternate take on part four, and I think early on there's definitely something to the more slice of lifey thing going on, where it's
Mm-hmm.
interactions with each member of the family, and they go down Shakedown Road, and they meet the characters there, and you learn
Mm-hmm.
little bits and pieces. But he realized that honestly, the characters were not as interesting as they were in part four, frankly. And
Mm-hmm.
he needed to do something, give it more of a narrative through line if he was really going to make it, if he wanted to carry it through, I guess. So even though the rock caca fruits were there, it was definitely something he was intending to go through, but he pulled that trigger, I think, earlier than he was probably planning to, and
Mm-hmm.
started making it the narrative through line, like really earnestly.
Yeah.
Uh, it's sort of like I think it was supposed to be honestly more like the Kira investigation in part four. You meet Kira in the middle, and then you set him up for a final arc. I think the Rakaka fruit were going to originally be sort of serve that purpose. You learn about them. They're there in the background. You're always gaining more information, and then eventually they it turns into the final arc. But, Araki realized that structure wasn't going to work for Joe Julian. It was a different type of story. So, to his credit, he recognized this accurately, and he did recognize it. He knew what wasn't working, and he decided to change it, and he was right, and he did change it, and it was a good idea.
Mm-hmm. And it's like here, Wooly Ram says if you're a gamma and a slash omega, it's probably best to avoid random plot lines. Your camera's on, and it's
Oh, is it?
yeah,
As I block the camera, you you all don't want to see my face.
but we did, and it's lovely, lovely. But uh, the thing about like JoJo's romantic plot lines is that like he actually did them pretty good. He's like Araki, I don't think is a gamma or omega character.
Uh,
Um,
he didn't
eh,
really have a lot, to be honest. They had very, very short romance, and I mean very short in part two. He had
no.
a very slight one in part one.
So
Part three has none.
slight. Phantom Blood has an outstanding series
I
interactions.
don't know. Erina,
Yeah,
there's not really much to Erina though. Like he falls in love young, and then there's no real personality there. It's
yeah.
fine. It works. I just don't, eh.
Okay, okay. I understand. So, all right, let me just go over the romance potential for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Phantom Blood, you have Jonathan Joestar and Arena, which they have dates, they have romantic entanglements, they show up later in each other's lives. Like there's stakes for their relationship. Like they actually work hard at it. Susie Q and Joseph Joestar is a little bit more strained, but it still works because Joseph is a clever dude, and Susie Q has a sharp
Yeah.
tongue on her, and she's a little
How
bit
about
crazy.
this? They're definitely not gamma in any sense. I mean,
No,
I I wouldn't put it like that at all.
yeah, right. And just to round out the list, Diamond is Unbreakable has Koichi and the Yandere, uh, who uses
Oh,
Love Love
Yamako.
Deluxe. Yamako,
That was
yep.
weird. that that was really strange. I thought in that arc, and again, this is have fun with no context JoJo here, but I thought in that arc it was gonna
Hmm.
end with her admitting to Koichi that she was like trying to mind control him, and then after she admits it, Koichi tells her that now it's gone, but he still likes her, and they end up
Hmm.
together. But no, that never happened. She never tells him she was doing that, and Koichi just ends up with her. So it's like I guess she successfully brainwashed Koichi. That's the
Yep.
moral of that story.
But the thing is that like she actually tries to sacrifice and work for it though. Like it's not just something that lands in each
She
other's
does.
laps.
Oh yeah,
there's
this isn't a
actual
bad. I
risk.
just thought it was funny. It was like I was like, wait, so she's not gonna tell him that she was like hypnotizing him? Koichi still thinks that he really just liked her that whole time, like, and she's not gonna do anything to correct that assumption. That's just
Women
how it
hypnotize
is.
men anyway,
It's
and that's
just how it is, man.
just how it is. So Vento Ario doesn't have any romance in it really. Um, None that I can think of. No straight romance anyway. Stone Ocean has Anasui and um, Jolene, as well as Heavy Weather and his sister, but he didn't know, which works out pretty well as far as things go.
Well, yeah,
Steel,
that was his crap.
yeah, that's why
That is
Poochie.
the first time I have ever thought of that, but that is correct.
That's why Poochie had a freak out, and why he thought he was hiring some thugs to just beat on him, and it's like, yeah, you're never gonna get on her again. And it's like, okay, man, okay, but then it's like, nope, he went to the KKK, apparently, because Araki doesn't know anything. He doesn't understand religion. He doesn't understand, American politics or history.
To be fair, let's be fair for a moment. I don't think
Hmm.
he ever calls them the KKK. He
Okay,
says something very
okay,
vague about how, as it turns out, they didn't like black, like there's something in there, like
I could
unbeknownst to
swear.
Pucci or something, they did not like, people of his race or something vaguish like that.
Hmm.
Basically, Pucci goes to hire them thinking that they're just generic mobsters, but he had the misfortune of going to a group that happened to really dislike mutts.
Hmm.
So that backfired on him horribly.
Right, I get you.
This
And
is a
it's like
good excuse to get into why part 6 is the best part of JoJo.
it is, and it is a really great part. But I'm just gonna finish it up real quick. Part 7 had a bit of romance, with a lot of platonic stuff going on. Actually,
Part
wait.
6 was so gay. It was too. I know that you're not. It's one of those things where, like, if you're not one of the SJWs, you don't really need to say stuff like that or admit it or whatever. But you know what? Let's all just say what we know is true deep down. Part 7 was so gay.
It was not gay. It was the epitome of bromance.
Yeah, but if you look, the relationship between Johnny and Gyro as written was undoubtedly not romantic. In fact, it was
Right.
a very good portrayal of a masculine friendship.
Yes.
However, Johnny is drawn with blue lipstick, and he's always talking about, and I am 100% sure this was intentional on Araki's part. He's always talking about touching Gyro's steel balls, and in the in between chapter panels, he is always drawn in some sort of feminine pose, contrasted to Gyro, like standing above him, looking very masculine. Let's all just say what we know is the truth. Part 7 is so gay.
Fine. It's the gayest. It's absolutely
With that
totally.
said, the weird thing about it is that Johnny and Gyro's relationship is undoubtedly, unquestionably 100% platonic.
Yeah. Well,
It's
like
just like there's weird subtext.
I
But
bet it's not the same subtext in Japanese.
you don't think so?
I think that's so. Like, here's the reasoning for it. A lot of Johnny's jokes, which make no sense in English, are actually apparently pretty funny in Japanese.
The
Like
only
it's
thing I could think of that was a real joke was Gyro singing his two silly songs, and then Johnny maybe sarcastically, maybe not, going, "Dude, that was genius."
so like um how do I want to put it? Uh So so he has several jokes roaming around that English speakers like myself, I didn't notice this until like it was pointed out to me, just kind of don't understand. Um, there's one where he jokes about Wednesday makes him crazy, which is a reference to a Japanese comic whose big joke is that anytime he hears or sees the number three, he goes crazy. And Wednesday is the third day of the week in Japan.
Ah, I
So
see.
so like that's one of the jokes. Another one is uh what is it? Just a second. I'm gonna find it.
Somebody pointed out correctly that Mista's 4 thing is actually probably, if you want to get really technical, a mistake on Araki's part.
Mrs.
Because,
Four.
yeah, Mista's whole thing with the number 4. Because
Yeah.
4 is really only an unlucky number in Asia. In Italy,
Yeah.
if you want to pick an unlucky number, it would be 13.
I gotcha.
With that said, you don't have 13 bullets in a gun.
It's true. Though six would also kind of work. So here's the examples. Um, Gyro has a "let me pass" joke. He says, "Excuse me, let me pass," while holding up four fingers, then two fingers, then none. Four in Japanese is shi, zero is rei, and two in English would be pronounced su. Thus, shitsure, meaning "excuse me," or the day of the week gag, which I explained. Um,
Right.
so, in other words, the famous gag about the pizza mozzarella and gorgonzola songs works in English because originally it can be understood in English.
Yeah, it is a pretty funny scene, too,
It is.
by
It
the way.
is like, it's like,
Johnny's reaction is what makes it when Gyro asks him, and then Johnny just gives this huge grin and goes, "Dude, that was genius." And then it's really hard to tell if either of them are being sarcastic because he goes like, "Really? Do you think you could write it down?" And Johnny's just like, "Absolutely. Soon as I get paper, it's going down." And Gyro's just like so excited about it. Yes, getting rich off of this.
right. And it's like, are they just both not willing to blink on it? Are they both serious? It's like, okay.
Is Johnny being super sarcastic and Gyro is being naive, or are they both joking around, or are they both serious?
Right.
Like,
And
it's
it's,
possible they both really think that that was just the world's greatest song.
yeah. And it's like there's other really funny like one of the best scenes that like I find pretty funny is like they're coming up and there's Hot Pants and Hot Pants has just tried to kill him and he's like, "Hey
By
Johnny."
the way, I find it really funny that people thought Hot Pants wasn't a girl. I actually was more confused when they were referring to Hot Pants as a guy because I had already mentally in my head put Hot Pants in the category of female because her name was Hot Pants.
You see, I didn't actually. I kind of like it's JoJo. You just kind of have to roll with the punches. Anyway, so he's meeting with Hot Pants and he goes, "Hey Johnny, what? Tell him to eat shit and die." What? No, you tell him. And he's like, "Yeah, all right." "Hey, what? Eat shit and fall off your horse." And it's like, okay, all right. This is
That
this
was
is
fun.
actually pretty funny. And then it's like the opening to literally the best arc in Steel Ball Run.
True Man's World.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
I don't know. True Man's World is your thing. That's
It's
and
it.
I picked Civil War, but True Man's World is outstanding.
Oh yeah. Civil War was okay. To me, I wasn't confused too much by it, but to me it was like a whole bunch of things going on. And I just didn't like it as
To
much as
me,
these
it
other
felt
people
like a
did.
huge. I don't know. In my head, I had this image of it. I can almost hear a soundtrack of like this huge tragic crescendo of music as all of Johnny's demons start like appearing and before him and
Oh
whispering
yeah.
to him and surrounding him. And I'm imagining, like in my head as I read it, almost like this big orchestral, dramatic music. So I don't know. I loved Civil War. I thought it was
Yeah, yeah,
really, really dramatic, but True Man's World was also. I mean, it was great. It was great.
it
So
was. The best arc in part 6. What do you think that is?
Made in Heaven. Don't even need to think about
Absolutely.
it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that might be the best, arguably the best arc in all of JoJo's.
Oh.
Certainly, I would say that's probably a top three at least.
Let's see. What would your top 3 be?
I think that Jotaro versus the world has to be on the list almost by default.
Okay.
Uh, cause it's the single most famous scene in the entirety of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure
Well, it's
as a
more about you,
franchise.
but
Yeah, still though.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, I put Made in Heaven on the list, and if I had to do a part three, hmm, I'm stuck in between the Kira fight and pick a scene in Steel Ball Run.
You see, for me, it's solidly Dio, versus Dio, then the True Man's World, and then in the court of the Crimson King, King Crimson, when
Oh,
it's
when they
revealed.
meet King Crimson,
Yep.
that
Like,
is a great scene though. My favorite. I always said, and I will say this, that my favorite scene in part five was, admittedly, this is very basic, but it was the 7-page Muda.
oh yeah, that is pretty good. By the way, a close fourth and fifth, like we're talking like barely a difference between the top three, would be Jonathan dying to Dio on the exploding steamship, and uh, Joseph versus Wamu.
That is both great scenes. I did always say that Jonathan versus Dio in the mansion is
Hmm.
under the radar, one of the best fights in all of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Oh yeah,
It
absolutely.
never People don't talk about it when they rank the best fights, but it's an incredible scene.
Oh yeah,
Like
like just all the dramatic tension that's been built up to this point just breaking out, and it's like, oh, thank goodness it's over, and then it's like it's not
honestly, that's
over.
really what sold me on JoJo's when I watched that scene and I was like, okay, so this was episode 3 of the show, and that was the dramatic climax of an entire series
Yep.
in
Except,
episode 3. And I'm
yeah,
like, I think I'm gonna like this show.
yeah.
I I could see where this if this is what they're gonna be doing, then I'm in.
I think Araki at a certain point though in this part one was making a kind of joke at a lot of um what's the word I want, making a joke at a lot of his contemporaries because he was writing JoJo in the era of like super buff anime dudes like blowing each other away in impressively messy fashions, where like you
True.
have like a villain and he has his like top four minions and the hero has to beat all four minions. I think like at a certain point he just got tired of it and went like, here's, the four members of Sting or whatever it was, and then they defeat them instantly, and it's like, yeah, all right, you're saying something here, this is actually pretty funny.
Um, you know what's really interesting when you read Araki's book on making manga? It's kind of fascinating to see how many decisions in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure were made on the basis of marketing.
Really?
Like the killing off of Jonathan Joestar was an entirely market driven decision.
But it
He
was done so well.
It was, but he admits it freely. They asked him, "So why did you kill off Jonathan Joestar?" Because sales were falling and I needed to make a change. That's literally like he it's not even written in a way that's funny. Like it's just they asked him
Yeah,
why and that was it.
money, dear boy.
Yeah. He's like, and then I added Joseph.
Yeah, no, and
And
that was,
stands too. Stands were really made for because they were commercial. He was having Araki is generally credited and correctly as the person who solved the power creep issue.
yeah,
he in shonen anime, which was Dragon Ball's most infamous, but it was a big problem in anime. So Araki in part two reaches what he considers to be pretty much the limit. Joseph defeats an immortal god, right? Where
Right.
do you go from there? So he comes up with this idea of, well, if everybody has unique powers that are attached to them, then maybe a power that's good against one person won't be good against another, and vice versa.
Yep.
And that's how he kind of solved the power creep problem. But
So
even that, like, that's not really an artistically based decision so much as how do I continue the story?
yeah,
Yeah.
and he hit it right. Like it was a great decision to bring Dio back for
It
part three.
was.
Like it's like all of a sudden we have somebody who will have tension inbred into the character.
Even
Um,
Jotaro. Jotaro was a very commercial, he was a very carefully created character. Jotaro is modeled off of 80s action movie stars, specifically like Clint
Clint Eastwood.
Eastwood.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
And that's because 80s action movie stars happen to be really popular in the 80s.
yep. David says solving power creep. If everyone's super, no one is. No one is super. And it's like, yeah, that's fair. Like it's like sure, there's probably no one except for Dio who could go toe to toe with Jotaro Kujo. Um, that's it's just Jotaro's probably the strongest head-to-head fighter in the series. But what do
Until
you do with that?
Giorno gets a game breaking bug.
And then he gets his own game breaking bug. But don't worry about that. Um, that's in a video game. The thing is that's not really a power fight. That's like I'm talking like stand rush to stand rush sort of thing.
There was this really hilarious video, unintentionally hilarious, but I thought it was funny, where a guy was like, "Why, what would have happened if Giorno was in part six?" And they get to the end of the story, and then he takes on Pucci, and he goes, "Look, guys, I want to be honest with you. I want to say this would be a close fight, but it wouldn't be." He's just like, Giorno would just crush him. He goes, and then what happens after that? And then they're like, well, nothing. The end.
Everyone gets gelato. Like, what do you think
Yeah,
happens in Italy?
the story ends.
Yeah,
Nothing happens.
but the
They
thing
go
is,
home.
right? And it's like people are like, why didn't Giorno show up? Giorno
That's
is
why.
OP. Like
That's
it's
why.
it's it's not going to be a thing. And if Pucci never shows up to fight Giorno, like then Giorno can't do his little meme magic and solve everything instantly. Like that's how it works. Um, yeah.
Which is
Well,
back to, we got away from part six.
that's because that's kind of how Part Six acts. Like
Yeah,
everything
right?
is sort of around Part Six, but Part Six is so important to everything. It's really stupid.
So,
Uh,
yeah, part six is my favorite part of JoJo. Jolene is probably is my second favorite JoJo. Uh, there's just so much that's in it to love. Mostly what I love about part six, though, is the increasing insanity.
hmm
As the story goes on, like, there's just this ever growing sense of chaos. Like,
Yep.
and it builds really slowly and it builds really smartly, I should say, really cleverly, the way that this happens as the battles slowly get bigger and bigger and things start spiraling out of control. There's definitely
hmm
this very real sense of, like, there is more going on here than you know. This isn't just about Jotaro's memories and Star Platinum anymore. This is much bigger than that.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, it's
And
not
then
even.
Dio, like they're talking about resurrecting Dio with a knuckle bone, except it's using a guy who creates invisible zombies. Except it doesn't create an invisible zombie. With like a certain amount of deaths of hardened criminals. Which we're not even talking about the specifics of that. It turns into this weird green like elf devil baby. That
Yeah,
um
that was so strange.
Yep. And
But I don't have a problem with it.
no, nobody has a problem with it, but it's like it's still one of those things that's just utterly, utterly weird, and
I will
it's
say this: Foo
bizarre.
Fighters was done dirty, man. All of the
Yeah,
characters appear in the sky at the end, but Foo Fighters.
that's true. That is actually true. But it was just
It's
a
done
bunch of
dirty.
plankton. Just a bunch of plankton.
But
Mm-mm-mm.
she changes Anna Sui's heart.
She
She's like
does.
racist towards the plankton until she sacrifices herself. And then he's like, oh man, I can't. He's like, I see the error of my ways. I can't let her sacrifice go to waste. He actually
Right.
says something fairly close to that at one point.
Yeah. And
Like,
it's good because like when they do the heavy weather arc, he's no longer the most psychotic member of the team, and that's really impressive.
see, there were some people I read in the forums. Anna Sui is one of those characters that's there's a huge split. I love Anna Sui, and I think of him a little bit like Stroheim in the fact that Stroheim is a literal Nazi, like an honest to God actual Nazi.
Yep,
Yeah, like not even implied, not one of those fake Nazis like Hydra or
proudly.
whatever. No, he's a Nazi, and he is indeed a Nazi. And I
Like,
think of Anasui the same way, where
mm,
it's like Anasui is a psychopath. I mean, like he's not implied. There's no real way to justify it. He's just an absolute lunatic.
yep,
He grew up obsessed with disassembling things, and then eventually he disassembled his girlfriend and her lover.
yeah,
And
you
I'm
know,
like, that's a crazy man right there. That is an absolutely insane lunatic individual. And you
and
know what? You are totally on board with the shipping by the end of that story.
yep, and
Because
that it,
I know I was shipping it.
yeah, me
That
too.
scene's also hysterical when he brings it up to Jotaro. That's actually like probably the funniest part of the entire story. When he's
Right.
like, I want to ask your permission to marry Jolene. And Jotaro like looks at him and goes, are you seriously doing this right now? Like, is there something wrong with you? It's like, do you know where we are right now? And he's like, look, I get it. I know we're in a tough situation, but this is very important to me. And Jodo's just like, dude, shut up. Like,
Right.
it's just like, what are you even talking about? Just shut up.
Like
We'll
we've got
talk
to
about
fight the
this
final
later.
boss, and it's like, but then he earns his respect by the end, and it's like, ah,
Well, then Jolene is like, all right, I'll let you ask me. And meanwhile, I'm just imagining Jotaro standing there going, what the hell did I miss? Like,
this is the last time I go into a coma.
yeah, just. I love Jotaro's reaction, though, mostly because it was so realistic.
Yep.
Like, he played it exactly the way Jotaro would play it. He hears him say that, and Jotaro's just like, dude, what is even wrong with you? Like, it's not even like whether it's good or bad that you want to marry her, but do you realize what's going on right now?
Yep.
Like everyone we're all about to die. Shut up. I also love the very, very quick one-off gag when Kyuchi has time speeding up, and they have a little thing in there that says all manga creators are struggling to meet their deadlines, and then they have a little thing where they go, except one, Rohan Kishibe.
He's like,
And
yeah, that's wish fulfillment for me, and I'm like, yeah, it's wish fulfillment for you.
it totally is, but I laughed. I
Actually,
did laugh.
it's kind of interesting because I just because I gotta pimp this out. I just released a book called Tears of Elfland, and
Yes.
it's like it's been in the pipe so long, and I've had to struggle with so many different things, and errors keep popping up in the thing. Even though like Joe, our publisher and I, we looked at it and we're like, yeah, this is fair, and then it's like, yeah, there's a B missing. What? That wasn't in there. Like the thing I sent in and the thing he worked off isn't missing the beat, but this is now missing the beat. Whatever. It's it's like it's whatever. Both of us missed it when we were proofreading. Um, which is more on me. It's like I actually feel refreshed now that like it's gone, and it's like now I feel like I could finally start working on other things just because it's like the pressure is off. It's kind of like how he yeah, I'm gonna switch up my genre. The last time it was a Prison Break sequence. This time it's going to be Wild West. This time it's going to be
Mystery, I guess.
fruity personal drama mystery hour. I guess it's more.
Yeah. JoJolian's the hardest to pin down.
We'll know by the end. It's one of
I've
those
always
things.
had some fun looking at Araki and seeing him try out different genres, but always different. It's almost like he's playing, here's a genre as told by JoJo. So,
Right.
part 5 is a gangster drama as told by JoJo.
Yep.
Yeah. Part 4 is JoJo Slice of Life.
Yep.
For whatever category that is. But back to part 6. The ending of part 6.
Oh.
What do you think of that ending?
So this will be the last thing we talk about because it's getting on
Because
an
it
hour and
should
a
be.
half.
And
You're
also
absolutely right.
because that is how you end the JoJo discussion. Dropping the bombshell of the ending of part 6.
My thing got pulled out by accident. I'm sorry, I kind of missed it. Anyway, so talking about part 6.
We're going to spoil the hell out of it, by the way. So, this
It
is
won't
just...
make any sense out of
Yeah.
context.
It will literally make absolutely no sense out of context, even more than normal.
So you've
So,
got,
you're warned.
You got Dio's platonic, and this is actually super important to the plot, platonic best friend.
The best villain.
The
Cough,
best
cough.
villain.
Yes.
So Pucci is to me the most consistent villain, period. Both Diavolo and Kira spike in the middle of their stories where it's where they get introduced and they're so full of menace and stuff like that. Kira kind of gets it back when during Bites the Dust, but to me Diavolo is just kind of all on a downhill train. Valentine is he's almost as good as Pucci.
I
He
thought
is.
Diavolo was pretty menacing when he takes out Polnareff.
Oh
He
yeah.
strikes a pretty menacing figure.
Right,
I thought he was a threat.
Yeah, I'm not saying that any of these guys were never a threat. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that the sort of, how do I want to put it? The lead up, the lead up to the final fight, it kind of brings them down a bit, and then it can move them back up. But it changes. Dio just stays menacing forever. He has his downs, when he's discovered to be poisoning George Joestar back in part 1. But then it's he's always on top until the very end, and he's has all the advantages until the very end. Cars is just the same sort of way, and it's great. Sometimes I put on his Aztec dubstep theme just to
Yes.
just to feel like it. It's
Cars
great.
is underrated. He might be the weakest JoJo villain, but that's by default more than anything else because he's a great villain.
Remember, Terrible JoJo is A tier manga. Just
pretty much.
Yeah, just on the strength of the art.
Cars is a very good villain. I mean, I thought he was a proper threat in part 2. I was not disappointed by him at all.
Mm-hmm.
How about that? He gets too little love, but whatever. Anyway, back on topic.
Jobin's the weakest villain.
Yeah. If he's really the final villain, but
if he's really
the final villain, but he's undoubtedly a villain. He gave his whole morale, I'm above morality speech to Tsurugi.
Which, interestingly, Pucci never really gives a speech where he's above morality. His morality is skewed, however, and he worships Dio like God, which is bad.
Yes. The reason I love Pucci so much too is because he's easily the most complex of the JoJo villains. Like, we know exactly why he thinks this way and what circumstances led him to think this way. And
Hmm.
we know exactly why he's making the decisions he's making. Like, there's a cause and effect chain that is very clear and is really interesting.
Yep. And it's honestly like just like it makes the series. It makes Stone Ocean. Like
Yes.
Jolene is pretty good, but she's to me she doesn't really sell it. Her supporting cast, she doesn't really have an S tier Jobro in it.
Her
Um,
supporting cast doesn't sell it. However, I think that Jolene, I would definitely, I love Jolene. I think she's a terrific character. Uh, you're giving a no?
it's I wouldn't say terrific. Like again, like JoJo characters are fantastic.
There's a scene. This is why Made in Heaven is the best arc. I don't remember if this was actually Made in Heaven or maybe like right before it, but the battle with the villain that can turn people inside out,
Yeah.
which is right in the chaos leading into the climax, which is
You
when,
mean Sea Moon?
yeah, yeah, which is when Stone Ocean is getting really good, is as it gets more and more chaotic, leading to the completely bonkers climax. And she's fighting Sea Moon, which can turn things inside out and whatever. And Pucci realizes that she's not dead, even though Sea Moon touched her heart. And he
Hmm.
says, that's impossible. There is no way she could be alive, and yet she is. So he goes searching for her. And there is this incredible splash panel where he finds Jolene just breathing heavily, looking down at him, and her entire chest has been contorted into a Mobius strip.
Great.
And it is such a great scene and a great moment. And everything about it is just sold, and everyone's reaction. Pucci does the classic, how are you possibly still alive thing. And
Hmm.
then that's followed up by another epic moment where Pucci manages to grab a gun, aim it at Jolene, and give his, you're so injured, you'll never be able to dodge this. And then
Hmm.
right there, everything freezes. A spear slashes him across the face, and we get another epic splash panel of Jotaro holding Jolene in his arms.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Perfect timing.
that whole 3-page sequence, just perfect. And it gets more and more awesome as Hermes explains the completely ludicrous way that she somehow managed to travel, up the road to them by like throwing a spear and then connecting her sticker to it and then riding it all the way up the road.
Yep.
Like,
Which is
everything about it was just so great. And I'm like, see, this is when I realized like Stone Ocean's my favorite.
but it's like it's also perfectly in logic with the story. And
Yes.
honestly, that what sells JoJo.
Unlike the snail scene. What?
The sales scene was fine.
I love the snail scene, but again, I loved it because this is why Stone Ocean's my favorite. It's absolutely bonkers.
Yeah.
The thing is, the snail scene makes zero sense, and
Sales scene makes perfect sense.
I have no idea what Pucci's rationale was for taking off his eyes.
Because
It,
the sky was influencing people to think that they're snails. It was an atmospheric thing. Remember,
that
heavy
makes
weather's
no
power
sense.
is that it can do anything the
That
weather
makes
can.
absolutely no
And
sense. The weather doesn't turn
apparently,
people into
they
snails.
weren't turned into snails, they just thought they were snails.
Ugh. You
It's
know what?
perfectly cromulent.
Whatever. I don't even have anything to say to that.
All
But we'll
right.
go.
Well,
The really controversial bit of Stone Ocean is not this section. It is the very, very ending. The the time skip.
yeah, it was fine. It's not like it's only controversial to people who want like a Golden Ocean, sorry, a Golden Wind sequel, which I don't want. So I'm perfectly fine with the story as is.
Honestly, I think
There's also some novels.
more people were upset that we didn't get more Josuke, I think, actually.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
That was my sister's. Part 4 is considered one of the better parts of JoJo. I know Araki himself considers it his masterpiece, even though I don't think anybody really agrees with that. But Araki thinks it though, and it's a very well received JoJo. Uh,
Yep.
I think people were actually pretty disappointed not to have more Josuke, but my thought on the ending, I loved it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that the writing of it was, let me put it this way. He gave himself a very, very difficult job. And if because he was doing something that really was incredibly ballsy. I mean, it's probably not a move that I would have made if I were writing Stone Ocean. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
I would have been able to do what Araki did. This means if he's going to pull off something as extreme as the ending of Stone Ocean, he needs to nail it. The writing needs to be dead on point at every moment because he needs to sell you when he's writing it. This is why this is the best decision.
Yep.
Like you need to prove to the reader that you know what you're doing, that there
Yep.
is a point to it, and he does it. I
You're
thought
absolutely
that
right.
the dramatic irony of the fight with Emporio, I thought was A plus plus, because Pucci, of course, is somebody who was taking off from where Dio left off, and Pucci sees the Joestars as his only serious threat. He even says as much to Anasui, who tries
Mm-hmm.
attacking him with Diver Down, and Pucci goes, "You don't matter to me, get away." And the only people that he considers any threat at all are Jolene and Jotaro. As he goes,
Yeah.
finally, I wiped out the Joestars. As Josuke looks around in the background and goes, did someone say something? And then he just shrugs and goes back to work.
Right.
Poor Josuke. But whatever. Anyway,
JD Cohen does want more Josuke, but it's like, look, that's why we have part 8.
how about
Anyway,
no? But no, I
right,
thought
right.
that the fight with Emporio, I thought that was a brilliant bit of writing that Pucci was so hyper focused and obsessed with the Joestars, and by far the weakest, possibly one of the weakest stand users in the entire series, actually. Uh, in Emporio, who has the ghost room stand, is the
Yep.
person who takes down Pucci's nearly impossible, insanely impossibly overpowered stand. He's the guy who takes him down, this 12-year-old kid with a basically useless stand. And I know, he gets heavy weather, but that's not the point. Is that Emporio himself is the least assuming of all of the characters in
Yep.
part 6. And he is the one who takes down Pucci,
And it
somebody who was
makes
completely overlooked. And
perfect
then,
sense.
yes, exactly. And then that final scene, the alternate universe scene where you meet the characters, A plus plus.
Yep.
I don't even like when the line "My name is Emporio," that final line of the story. I am just looking forward to seeing it animated because that's probably the only part of JoJo that I would say has potential to make me tear up.
Ooh, that's pretty impressive.
That is impressive.
Yeah.
But that scene, I think that's such a moving and well written scene.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just so well done when you see Emporio's just standing there shivering in the rain, and you could just sort of see on his face like all of the weight had just come crashing down on him, and now he's just a scared 12-year-old kid, and he thinks that
Mm-hmm.
all of his friends are dead, and then suddenly they're all surrounding him, and it's just and yeah, I just love it. I love everything about it.
Oh yeah.
So I am so looking forward to seeing that adapted. I want to see that increasing chaos, the snails, the friggin' Bohemian Rhapsody, which was absolutely nutso.
Yeah, I don't think it was very good though. It's one of my least favorite stand fights in the series.
Oh, but it was so ludicrous, though.
Yeah,
I
it was
cannot
pretty
dis
ludicrous. I didn't
I
enjoy it.
cannot dislike something that is that absolutely insane.
Uh-huh.
I can't dislike something that goes that far. All of the artwork in the world has come to life. You're being attacked by the seven dwarves.
Yep.
They're just, and I was just reading that going, I don't even know what I'm reading right now, but I love it. With that
Hmm.
said, was it executed as well as it could have been? Who knows? But I do know that I appreciated the fact that he went there.
Yeah. His dream was pretty good. Anyway, we've been streaming for 105 minutes so far, and I am starting to get tired. And I have jury duty in the morning.
Oh,
Anthony, do you have any final words for us?
uh, watch part 5. I loved it.
Part five
Finale
was
was finale was quite satisfying as an overall product. It was outstanding.
yep, and it was all pretty good. Do check out my new book, Tears of Elfland, and I hope to see you all guys next week, where I'm joined by Bradford Walker to talk about his book, as well as his plans for the future. Have a good one.